Welcome to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco, bringing you interviews with industry experts and regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews in 60 days, guaranteed. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to have with me my colleague from across the pond, based in the UK. Steve Nicholls is the Managing Director of Executive Connexions, a global executive career coach services and outplacement firm. Unsure of his career direction back in his early days, Steve joined the London Metropolitan Police at the age of 17, where he spent time on riot control, crime busting, and helping ladies cross the street. He also worked in retail sales and spent some time in the world of advertising sales, leading teams and product launches. After returning to school and earning a Career Guidance Graduate Diploma and then pivoting into college and career guidance, Steve then launched what evolved into Executive Connexions back in 2011. And his firm stands today as a niche provider of personalized career coaching for senior executives. So, Steve, thank you. I love your career background. It's so unique. I love very non-traditional, which is wonderful.
Yes.
I'd love to hear from you, overview of what you do and what prompted your passion to help others in the career space, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. And hi, thanks for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. Just very briefly, for those who don't know much about the UK, depends on where you're listening from, obviously. I'm based down in a little county called Cornwall, which is right down the very southwest tip of the UK. It's very rural. We've got lots of beaches and so on. And I tend to travel up into London, which is about a 4-hour train trip away a couple of times a month for various bits of business. So I was kind of born and bred in this area. So that's why I find myself here now, and I'm able to run things pretty successfully from working in that kind of way. So
and manage that commute.
Well, yeah, not exactly a commute. I mean, I sort of plan it. But in any event, just in terms of about the business, I guess. It's as you mentioned. And by the way, I was kind of smiling about your on your introduction there about my background. Yeah, it is varied. Yeah, I did dip into the Metropolitan Police Force and was allocated a very, very let's call it a busy area of London at that time. So time I graduated out of the cadets, I was about 18 and a half, and it was a real eye-opener, let's say.
Wow.
So I view it as just my little bit of national service, shall we say? That kind of at the time. So yeah. But we are, as you say, we're based in the UK. We coach leaders typically, quite a lot in the UK and EU, but wider afield as well. I'd say senior level executives, however you define that, I'd say sort of C level and maybe VP level as well.
Okay.
In terms of just career transition, so it can be they come to us independently, or it can be because they've unfortunately been made redundant. So these days I have a team of coaches who deliver the day-to-day coaching, and got a few people doing various support bits and pieces, and I really, really enjoy it.
Do you work with expats or people looking to work in other parts of the country, parts of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's happened in lots of different guises, from, say, a couple who had moved from, where was it now? Washington, D.C. to somewhere in Australia. He liked it and was getting on well in his career. She didn't. So obviously, they're married. So they decided to come back together. So kind of helped them do that in an individual coaching sense for each of them, was quite an interesting project. Other times there's been, say, maybe a CFO working somewhere in mainland Europe who wants to go back to the UK. So it varies. People are having their own life and they're traveling back and forth, and we'll try and sort of network them in with people along the way as well, as much as possible, which is a really useful bit of the service. Is just, it's rather than just talking about some of the usual things which we can talk about, it's kind of helpful to to allow people access to your own broader network if you feel there are people who are relevant, to that individual.
Right. No, agree. So I'm curious to hear your take on, one or two challenges facing those in the executive space that are testing the job search waters either by choice or not, who are, maybe looking to make a pivot or really just to land somewhere new.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I probably could think of a couple of things there, really. In terms of framing these as definite challenges, adapting to just new ways of conducting a job search, that can be a real challenge for people because, maybe the last time they had a role, they were spreading the newspaper out on the floor and cutting ads, clipping ads kind of thing. Now, obviously it's changed a heck of a time. So we speak to a lot of people where it may have been 15, 16, 17 years since their last job search. Not always, but it can be. So if you're, a senior exec, you've got to build that strong personal brand. And I know you know all about this because I was just looking at your video just now about the importance of your photograph on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so, there you go.
Yeah. So fully agree. So, so it isn't just about applying for advertised roles, having that kind of mindset where they put a tick in the box because they've applied for another role and speaking with recruiters and that kind of stuff. I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying there is another way, which I will probably, come on to, based around branding, no real secret, but that is a challenge for people to make that pivot from thinking it is just about advertised roles and recruiters to actually how you apply yourself on an outward facing way to the market on the
your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very. Yeah. I'll keep coming back to that. I'm afraid, I'm going to keep saying that because it is such an important thing. Some people will get it and run with it. Some will run with it for a while and then default back to old behaviors. So for people to learn that new way of job search, it's really, really vital these days, But the other thing, that's right. You mentioned something else, didn't you, about making maybe a complete sort of pivot, Yeah, I think that it can be... We've done a fair bit of that where it can be really exciting as coaches. That can be a really exciting piece of work to do because, you've got someone where it's almost like a blank sheet of paper. What ideas have you ever had in your life from when you were a teenager right through? Which ones can we kind of push to the side for reasons fairly swiftly? Which ones do we leave on the table? But it can come down to very pragmatic things at the end. If they've built a six-figure lifestyle with proportionate outgoings, of course, that always happens, and no matter what money we're earning, you sort of match up to it. And let's say, you've had people who might want to move to a 20,000 a year lifestyle. So how do they make that transition between 100 and 20? For some people, that's a bridge too far. For others, if they have substantial savings, they might be able to traverse that bridge.
Yeah, no, and I see that as well. You're right. Sometimes you have to be aware that no matter how well positioned you are for this next move, if you decide to make a change, there's some deal breakers involved. And if a certain salary limit is a deal breaker, then maybe that option is no longer for you. You have to understand practically what you can and can't live without.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it may feed into our particular niche in a way where if someone is senior level, typically they're going to be 40s, 50s in terms of age range. So maybe at that point, it's even harder to actually draw back. But I have known people do it. I've known people with incredible salaries in sort of city roles in London who wanted to become a kind of a therapeutic practitioner. Well, you can imagine the difference in salary there, but actually the plan was savings, bridging the gap, and all sorts of things around that, So,
you're right. Making that plan. Well, maybe you've already answered this, but is there something that you find that your clients are just utterly surprised by when they do start job searching? And maybe it is that things have changed or the branding's so important, but what do you feel like they are most caught off guard with?
It probably relates to branding. One of the functions that lie underneath that personal branding piece, which I know is just a phrase that we throw about, and for people out there listening, it's about you taking a proactive stance and getting people to notice you by virtue of the activities you're putting into social media and so on and so on. So, but this piece goes along with that. So I would say the surprise is around the need for networking, or the need for networking being almost the key part of it. Now, I know people have always done networking, but there will usually be a fair proportion of people going on to sort of LinkedIn and other areas that's specialist sites for their industry, and just sort of clicking apply and then thinking, oh, that's another one done, getting a bit of satisfaction, but it will still keep coming back to that. You've got to go out. The most interesting roles are probably the ones that aren't advertised. Therefore, how do you get across more people's radar? And the only way you can get across more people's radar is by being proactive and getting people to notice the comments, the content, the postings, whatever it is that you're putting out there. So that's probably the piece that they're most surprised by, that's kind of changed to even more emphasis.
No, I'm in complete agreement. And I do think that networking has always been a part of many people's job search. I mean, I hear all the time where someone says, I really haven't had to look for a job in years because my colleague recruited me to this role, my old boss recruited me to that role, and that's networking. But I guess I would say that purposeful, proactive networking, by knowing who you are, what you want to put out there about your brand, putting that out there for the public to see, that's a little bit more purposeful than I think the kind of networking that used to happen.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And that could be driven by just the fact that we're kind of moving from this, a colleague of mine put it in the sort of industrial age leaders moving to digital age leaders. I know I talk about leaders a lot as the group that we work with, but it applies to many different cohorts, So it's looking at that, what used to be the way to do it in the industrial age to what's the way to do it in the digital age. And as lofty as that can sound to some people, that's a pivot worth taking note of, and actually just ramping up that networking and doing it in a smart way. We both know, you're not going to do it in a pushy or needy or, aggressive kind of way, but it's doing it in the right way. So yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. I haven't thought about it. About we are in that shift from industrial to digital, and what worked there. You need to adapt because the market's adapting.
Exactly.
So one of my favorite questions: what drives you most nuts or crazy when it comes to job seeker client mishaps, or just things that you see people doing over and over again that just make you want to shake them?
Make me want to shake them. Well, I think
maybe not violently.
No. That's right. We would never do that. I think that sometimes it's going to come down to, if you are, as a coach, you're going to always ask yourself, therefore, have I done my job properly in answer to what I'm about to say? But if you are teaching, training, coaching someone, however you want to frame it, new ways of conducting a job search, and they will just consistently fall back to other ways of doing it and say, well, look, nothing's happening, kind of thing. So how many people did you connect with this week? What kind of conversations have you been having? What's your social activity been like? Have you put any articles out? And this wouldn't just be off the top of my head. It would have been following coaching relating to all those subjects, So
right.
It's probably, and again, that frustration is just born out of the fact that people will default back to type, and the type is kind of, not to do things that are going to raise you above the parapet. People don't like to be seen sometimes, or to be noticed too much in that kind of what is seen, depending on which country you're in and the sort of and the accompanying culture. People don't like to raise their head above that parapet and push themselves out there and be seen as being this thought leader and all these kind of things.
It's outside of people's it's outside of people's comfort zones. I mean, I think that's I empathize with that, but no, you're right. And in my view, the best way to help all of us avoid falling back on bad habits is to have an accountability partner, whether it's a coach or someone that you trust that says, I know I need to reach out to these amount of people follow up with me, make sure I do it.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking about a client of ours who said, "No, I've got a friend, and he'll tell me things as it is, which is what you want, but he doesn't do it in a constructive way. He doesn't like you'd say you give feedback. You give a bit of positive, put the feedback bit in the middle, and then at the end you do another bit of positive." His friend just waves in with the next. Yeah. So his friends that kind of holds him to task, but not. In the kind of way. So yeah, I absolutely agree. There's trusted friends, partners, wife, husband, partner, whoever it might be, and sort of start there at least, but get as much of the view as you can.
No, because it is so easy to fall back on bad habits, whether it's cheating on your diet or job searching and knowing you need to be out there on social media.
I breathed in then when you said that. Yeah.
Oh yes, me too. Good thing we're not on video.
The diet, that's right.
So what advice do you give your clients when they come to you and say, I'm thinking about making a move, I need to find a job, but they haven't really gotten started. Where do you think that they should get started?
Got you. I mean, we're talking about someone who's maybe already in the workplace, looking for a change. Someone that is either has, the clients that you see, whether they are displaced displaced by choice or have been, part of a workforce reduction. Yeah, fair enough. Well, I guess it's why, we must have a fair amount of success for some reason, because I'm going to be the broken record again, probably. And I'm not saying, ignore, resumes. I mean, don't ignore getting a good resume. Don't ignore speaking to recruiters. Don't ignore advertised roles, but do focus on building that credible, authentic brand. And I would say use LinkedIn as a primary sort of method for that. I mean, some people will go whole hog and have a YouTube channel on a certain aspect of their sector or their business or something they want to put out there to the world and get themselves known for something. Some will have their own blog. There is always this thing about what if LinkedIn disappears tomorrow? All your stuff is gone, kind of thing. Which is why some people will talk about having their own blog. Not many people do, I would say, but it's
a lot of work. No, yeah.
Yeah, for someone who's kind of just literally in a job search. So I would just come back to that. Don't ignore those other things I mentioned: the CV, resume, the speaking to recruiters, the advertised roles, but do put a big amount of effort. You imagine a pie chart. I'd say 50% or 60% into building the thought leadership. And if that's too lofty a phrase, think about it as personal brand and actually people noticing you for what you want to be known for. That's the important thing, getting across more people's radar, So that's the big thing.
Sort of positioning yourself as an expert in something, whatever it is you want to be known as an expert in.
Precisely right. And anybody can do that, no matter what their level is.
Do you, so for those people that are, the idea of creating posts or articles on LinkedIn just overwhelms them, what are your thoughts on commenting on people that are established experts in the thing you want to be known for? Do you feel like that's a good baby step for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that obviously LinkedIn is a movable feast as far as what things tend to work on LinkedIn. And when I say work, I mean, just for those listening, I know you appreciate this, but it will be working the kind of things that will get you more notice. So it used to be articles was the big thing. Now articles seems to have dropped off their algorithm a little bit. It seems to be at the moment about commenting and liking. So not so much sharing, funnily enough. That's my latest info anyway. We can talk about that.
Same. No, the whole algorithm, shifting algorithm is another topic, but yeah.
Yeah, but certainly to come back to your question, yes, absolutely. I think, the liking and commenting on people that you want to be associated with in some way, and that whole kind of absorbing thing, that whole osmosis bit, if you're seen to be in the same kind of field as someone, then that, I would say, certainly can be helpful. But actually making it clear to somebody what you offer, that's probably the biggest thing at the end of the day. And that's going to come back again to your resume, your LinkedIn heading, your main headline or, your summary
No, you're right. That's all part of it. I do feel like in terms of jumping into something that's completely uncomfortable, a good way to start is figure out who's active on LinkedIn or on Twitter, I guess, or wherever it is, and add an insightful comment to what they're already putting out there. And people will see it. And it gives you comfort with starting to get your voice out there.
Yeah. And as a PS to that, I would say then when or if people start to visit your LinkedIn profile, if they look like they're potentially useful, you can reach out and say, noticed you viewed my profile, anything I can help you with, et cetera, whatever the approach you want to take. But certainly that comes back to that proactive piece again. I know, you know the phrase kissing frogs, there's going to be some views that are just irrelevant. You're kind of trying to screen if anyone looks useful, if it was a recruiter or somebody in the sector you're working in or aspiring to, then certainly reach out to that person. You can lose nothing by doing that.
That's right. You're right. And sending a connection request saying, I loved your post on this. Exactly. Once you have put that comment on. No, it's a great way to build your online network. Exactly. So we've talked about the person who has started job hunting and they're just getting started. What about the person, and I imagine you have clients like this that have been at it for a while and it's not going well. How do you help them figure out where they're going wrong?
Yeah, I think it does come back to doing something different again. The phrase that's sort of supposed to be quoted by so many different people about the definition of madness is doing the same thing.
Insanity,
et cetera. Yeah, that kind of stuff. So I think that's sometimes it. I mean, I've had people say, I feel like I'm walking towards a cliff edge, quite emotional outpourings during, just an initial conversation if someone's been looking and getting frustrated for quite some time. And apart from the things I'm talking about, people have got the idea by now that I talk a lot about branding and the importance of that, but often it can come back down to what comes before that. And it's maybe not so much advice, it's more around support. And so if it's not through in a professional capacity in any extent, just think about your resilience. Think about your emotional intelligence. Think about how you're actually feeling at the moment, and think about maybe are you transmitting anything to across to people when you're speaking to them. You don't want to come across as if you're sounding really depressed, or whatever it might be when you're on the phone or whatever it might be. So it's kind of, you can try things differently. These are a few things we'd suggest. Try this, try that, LinkedIn, all the other stuff we talked about. But actually, I would probably take a step back with someone in that stage and just say what's really been going on. And that's probably where the coaching comes into it. I mean, it's not psychotherapy, it's just asking questions and properly listening to the answers. That's the key thing. But I would just say to people, think about it. How are you feeling? Have you done a quick kind of you can go online and do these things on emotional intelligence and get a benchmark for yourself and then revisit it again in a couple of months' time. You can do that kind of stuff. It's all really, really worth doing, because the other thing that happens is you can come across as too pushy, too needy, too desperate, going straight to the have you got a job piece. You hear people, and I'm no different, you hear people talk about it like the dating analogy where, would you ask to get married or whatever you want to say on a first date.
Right. We're not ready to date and haven't even had coffee. So
yeah, exactly. So it's the same thing with people, be respectful of people you're connecting to and speaking to. Always try and add value to that. Make it a win-win, Stephen Covey type stuff. Make it a win-win conversation, But I'd certainly still come back probably as a base camp thought about how that person's feeling, and just spend a bit of time them, examining how are they actually feeling in themselves. Do they need a kind of a bit of an emotional boost? Do they need to get out, do more exercise? Whatever it actually is, it's going to help them get in a good place, rather than just keep running around the hamster wheel.
No, and I like what you said, because it, whether you're working with someone or doing a self-assessment, something to give you some insight, it will allow you to self-reflect so you can see, am I being too this, too that, moody, pushy, clingy, demanding, whatever it is, and seeing that reflected back can help you to, obviously reframe and fix it. So, no, that's excellent advice. So I get this all the time, and I'd love to get your insight on it. People that come to you and just say, I've never had a chance to sort of look for a job. I want to, I can do a whole bunch of different things. I can be a COO, I can be a CEO, I could be CFO. Do you have advice on how they should approach that?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the human side and the kind of paperwork side of things, I would say, because within coaching, or people can probably find these things or something similar around. There are probably many coaching tools that we would look at in terms of the leadership style type tests or the personality type profile tests, things like that. Are you a risk taker? Do you have entrepreneurial type things? There's lots of different ones, but a lot of people have done. I'm trying to think of the one that's based around colours at the moment. You might remind me, but things like Myers.
It's oh my gosh. Now it'll come to me.
I'm talking about probably more specialised career.
4 letters. It's a 4-letter assessment. Now I can't remember the name. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
The DISC assessment.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah. So I'm kind of talking more about specific coaching tools where you would start to identify your strengths and weaknesses in certain areas and trying to get a handle on your preferences and feeding in your sector, anything else, And this might sound quite broad because it could equally apply to people who are doing that big transition piece as well, So I'm a great believer in getting people to write things down because if you write it down, it's more likely to sink in and more likely to happen. So I would just get somebody to write down every single idea they've had, and maybe go down the old school pros and cons list for each one, because that can often bring out preferences. If you're just starting to write things more on one side of it, maybe that one's a ditch, or it's one to keep on the table. Right. So it's always trying to get 2 or 3 options maybe left on the table. That's the sort of
and sometimes I found, and I don't know if you steer people in this direction, but sometimes when people can hold a sort of a number of different C-suite roles, they will do well in the startup environment because they only have so much seed money, but they need someone who can lead sales and look at the balance sheet, and so they can do some finance and some operations and some sales until the company gets to the next level, gets bought out, and then they move to the next opportunity. But sometimes there are certain kinds of companies where that diverse skill set might work.
Yeah, I think so. I would relate that to things like venture capital and private equity.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
It's just around, it can be hard to break into, though. There seems to be a circle that once you're in that kind of work, then you get known, and then the private equity people. Or
I agree. It's a small world, and they do all seem to know each other.
Yeah, but then again, people have broken into it at some point. So I certainly agree with what you're saying. It offers flexibility, and obviously it offers people that kind of opportunity of maybe in 3 to 5 years' time, waltzing off into the sunset with $1 million.
With some equity. That would be nice. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it just depends.
So, given that you work with, you said people in their 40s and 50s, I want to shift gears a little bit and ask you about concerns around age discrimination and hiring practices. I don't know what it's like in Europe and in the UK. Is that a concern? Is that something you have to coach to? Because it's certainly something we deal with in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's first off there's legislation that relates to it, but the difficulty is when it's not overt and when other reasons are offered.
Well, right. It's against the law, but we're dealing with humans. That makes human nature sometimes makes it tough.
Yeah. No, I would say that for sure. As someone who is is kind of advanced in years myself, I mean it exists.
Right there with you.
Yeah. I mean the age range you mentioned. Yeah, people do start to get that little voice in their head about, I wonder if it's anything to do with my age. I mean, it's no accident that we've got, from memory, I mean, there's probably one or two articles. There's certainly a white paper. There's certainly a podcast, on that very subject. So it's kind of, it is one of those things, I talked a couple of questions ago about mindset and confidence and, emotional intelligence and so on. But certainly it can be one of those concerns that do creep into people's mind, over a period of time. I always say it's just one of those subjects that there aren't many subjects I would say to somebody, oh, just ignore it. Keep the blinkers on. Do you know what I mean by that? I don't know if that translates across the Atlantic, where they put these kind of things on horses so they can't see out to the side and they don't get panicked. So
like blinders, but blinders.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
I wanted to make sure I translated that properly for you.
Okay.
but yeah. So imagine a horse, with the blinders on. That's the only time that I recommend people to have the blinders on is within ageism, because at the end of the day, you can only change the way that you think. You can't change the way that other people think, and you can just spend so long agonizing over it, particularly if you're not getting feedback about a certain role that you might have come second or third in, or what have you. Age can just start to eat away at you. It reminds me of the book Taming Your Gremlin as well, where we've all got that little voice. We've all got that little voice inside us, in other words, that wants to keep us in a safe place, that wants us not to step outside our comfort zone, and so on. And that reminded me of that particular book. So I would say to people, keep the blinders on and just move on to the next opportunity, because, what it is going to happen. You are going to be successful if you just keep going, and be relentless. If I've got no other qualities, relentlessness is one of them, and I would always try and encourage people to be the same in their job search.
Well, and I love what you said. You can't change how other people think. Biases are what they are. But if you have your brand, you position yourself as an expert, and you position yourself as current and knowledgeable and willing to keep on learning, then you're right. You keep the blinders on, you keep going to find, like you said, you have to keep kissing frogs, but you might have to go through a couple more companies than maybe someone else would that's a little younger. But
exactly, and that's why I think that, just skipping quickly back to that resilience piece I talked about, mindset. That's why it's important to keep revisiting that with yourself. If you're working with a professional, if you're not, just keep revisiting it yourself from time to time, because you will hit peaks and troughs. You will have bad days. And if you have a bad day, just have the day off and just get back on the horse.
Yeah.
A lot of equine analogies here at the moment. But anyway, I'd say get back on the horse.
Frogs
the next
and horses.
Yeah, and blinders and all the rest of it.
So someone comes to you and says, I need 2 tools. That's all I can have in my tool belt in order to go on my career journey. What do you think those need to be?
I think it's got to be around mindset again, rather than because there are lots of good books out there. There are lots of good resources and lots of good people in the industry that we work in. So I would just say, and I did I stole this of a colleague of mine, actually, who talked about being in a mode of constant inquiry, is what he called it. Now, I don't know whether he called it from somewhere else, but in other words, always be curious, always be learning, always be networking. Just to put a little bit of more meat on that, I mean, it applies in an interview scenario as well. Just a 30-second story about a client who went in for an interview, was just very, was very up in terms of mood, looking around, engaging the reception people. Oh, how long have you worked here then? Oh, what's it like? What's it like to work here? And everyone he spoke to was actually involved in a 360 process, unknown to him at the time. So other candidates who were just kind of swanning past and going and sitting down in reception and waiting for their turn missed a bit of a trick there. So that piece about being in constant inquiry is just about always be curious. Use whichever phrase you like. I think always be curious just works the same. So I'd say, what else? Well, I guess I got to come back to social again. Really, it's not just about, if we take LinkedIn as being a primary social media platform for job search and business networking, but there are others out there that we could kind of debate about their merits and so on. But it isn't just about getting up to speed and becoming a middle of the road or fairly expert, as you perceive it, LinkedIn type of person. It would be still doing that when you get into the next role. That's the biggest thing I could say. So be in that mode of inquiry and keep active the whole time. Even if you only diarize an hour a week, just keep going, keep meeting new people.
Even after you land, I cannot agree more.
Choose to prioritize it, because people will slip off of that kind of activity. But,
what are your thoughts on paying for LinkedIn while you are job hunting? Do you think it's worthwhile? I mean, I know you can always do a trial run for a month. See if you like.
Sorry, did you say using it or going premium?
Yeah, going premium, paying for LinkedIn
right.
during your job search. Do you feel like it's valuable? I didn't used to, but I do now.
Yeah, I think I looked at this, and I think there's a couple schools of thought about if you're really digging under the hood and getting the most out of vanilla LinkedIn as possible. You're probably doing twice as much as the average user is anyway. So that would be the first step. Make sure you're getting most out of the free version. But there are things like, I guess, what swung it for me, I suppose, if you're looking to network with people, your searches will result in more pages of potential people to network with. So that's a tangible reason. And gosh, what is it with the emails these days? Is it about 10 or 5 or 10 or something?
No, now you don't even get any for free. But the searching, my son's in college and he is trying to do some searches for his internship, and the limitations with his free account are so few that he's been logging in using my password, and I told him yesterday, I said, you need to have your employer pay for this, because it's really so limiting now.
Yeah, I got you. Well, I'm just glad then that I've got what they call one of these grandfathered. Mine's great-great-grandfathered, but yes. Yay, good. So we're okay. So I think actually I have got a few emails. I can't remember if it's 5 or 10, but I'm sure I've got a few that I tend. You must use them though if you've got them. So that would be the other benefit. Maybe if you have the premium icon. All it says to people is that maybe you're more active on LinkedIn than other people, so they might gravitate towards you for opportunities, perhaps a little bit more.
Yeah, well, it does give you access to certain recruiters that have purchased LinkedIn software for that. But the good thing is you can try it out for free for 30 days and see if you get value out of it.
Exactly, and if you're very nice to their support, you can initiate the trial, and they'll go in and cancel the payment for you there and then. So you don't even have to worry about 30 days time remembering to.
That's right.
Get on and cancel.
That's exactly right.
Top tip.
Well, go ahead.
No, that was it. That was the top tip.
So last question, my favorite one. What is next for you? Anything exciting that you want to share?
I think really what I'm always looking at with our business is how do you scale? How do you get to help more people to be successful? That's the sort of bottom line, really. So looking at, are there innovative ways to reach more people? More collaboration is another way forward, these days for many businesses as well. But apart from that, maybe I'll write another book or produce a course or something like that. We'll see. But,
okay.
Keeping going. That's the main thing. So I think helping more people to be successful. That's what drives me. So that.
I love that. So you are in a mode of constant inquiry. So if people want to learn more, I have your LinkedIn URL and your website on your bio. But how would you like people to reach out to you?
Whichever way they prefer. So
if you want to reach out to Steve through LinkedIn, that information is available, or his website. But thank you so much for joining us. I love the advice you gave, and good animal analogies, which are always helpful.
Thanks again. Care. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
You've been listening to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's skim online readers, hiring and decision makers, go to www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.